The morning sun rose over the dusty edge of Merrow Ridge, a small town where secrets usually blew away with the wind, except this one. It began with a girl running barefoot down an abandoned railway path, her breath shaking, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would echo across the quiet fields. Her silk dress, once pristine, now torn, dragged behind her like the last thread tying her to a life she was desperate to escape. She didn't know where she was going or how far she could make it. She only knew one truth. If she stopped, her life would no longer belong to her. And if she kept running, maybe, just maybe, it finally would. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected people changing each other's lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Matters. Your support means everything. Her name was Alara Windsor, though no one in this corner of the world would recognize it. The Windsor family owned half the metropolitan skyline 3 states away, controlled tech companies, pharmaceutical giants, shipping lines. Wealth followed them like a shadow that never dimmed. But none of that mattered out here, where Alara's hands stung from gripping rough tree bark as she hid behind a fallen trunk, trying to steady her breathing. She had left behind the mansion, the guards, the suffocating expectations, and most importantly, the arranged marriage that had been forced on her like a business contract disguising itself as tradition. She hadn't even known the groom. She had only known she didn't want her life traded like a merger. As she crouched in the shadows, trembling from exhaustion and fear, she heard a vehicle approaching, a rattling, coughing engine that didn't sound like one of her family's sleek black SUVs. When she peeked out, she saw a rusted pickup truck bouncing over the uneven dirt road, paint peeling, bumper held with wire. At the wheel sat a man in a grease-stained shirt, sleeves rolled up, jawline shadowed by a morning beard. He looked tired, but honest. The type of tired earned by someone working 2 jobs just to sleep peacefully at night. His name, as she'd learn later, was Rael Kincaid. Rael wasn't expecting to find a stranger stumbling onto the road, but when he braked hard and stepped out, he saw more than a disheveled young woman. He saw fear carved into her posture, desperation shaking her fingers, and beneath all that, something softer, something fragile trying not to shatter. She looked nothing like the people around town, yet everything about her made him stop and care before he even understood why. She could barely speak from exhaustion, but when he noticed the cut on her arm and the bruise forming along her shoulder, instinct overruled caution. He motioned her toward the truck, not planning anything beyond giving her a safe ride into town, maybe a meal, maybe a phone. He had no idea his simple kindness was about to change the entire course of his life. The first thing she noticed in his truck was the scent, a mixture of motor oil, old leather seats, and something faintly sweet like orange peels. It grounded her after hours of chaos. Rael asked nothing of her, only drove in the sunlight, his window open, letting the warm wind soften the tension in her spine. When he finally brought her to his small mechanic workshop on the edge of town, a large metal shed with tools hanging like aging soldiers, she felt strangely safe. Rael set a bottle of water in her hands and gave her space, pretending not to notice the tears she tried so hard to hide. He wasn't used to wealth or softness or mystery. His life revolved around engines, broken bolts, overdue bills, and the dream of someday opening a bigger shop. He had grown up in Merrow Ridge, lost his parents young, fought through poverty with grit rather than comfort. So when he looked at Alara, sitting silently on a wooden stool, holding the bottle as if it might dissolve, he didn't see a runaway heiress. He saw a woman alone and hurting, and he couldn't ignore that. She didn't tell him her full truth, only that she was fleeing a dangerous situation and needed a place to hide for a day or 2. Rael had no obligation to help. He had customers waiting, parts to order, debts that didn't care about strangers. But something in Alara's expression, this mix of fear, hope, and exhaustion, made him nod before logic could speak. He cleared out the small storage room in the back, sweeping away dust and stacking old tires like protective walls. It wasn't much, just a cot, a fan that clicked when it turned, and a curtain that didn't quite reach the floor. But to Alara, it felt like sanctuary. As the day stretched on, sunlight poured through the shop's wide entrance, illuminating the swirling dust like tiny dancing stars. Rael worked with calm concentration, fixing engines and arranging parts, while Alara stayed hidden in the back, occasionally peeking out to watch him. She felt a strange peace watching him. Someone who lived honestly, who worked with his hands, someone whose life wasn't shaped by corporate strategies or media scrutiny. His world was small but real, and she envied that deeply. Rael, on the other hand, tried not to intrude on her silence, but he kept checking in discreetly, passing her an extra sandwich he'd packed, leaving a blanket without comment, adjusting the fan so the warm afternoon didn't suffocate her. It wasn't romance or attraction at first. It was empathy. Two lives that had never crossed were suddenly sharing a fragile thread of trust. But shadows move faster than sunlight. As the afternoon brightened, black SUVs started appearing near the highway, their tinted windows sweeping across the town like predators searching for prey. Word spread fast in a place like Marrow Ridge. Strangers asking questions, offering rewards, showing pictures of a missing woman. Rael overheard the chatter at the small diner when he picked up lunch. He recognized the photo instantly. It was Alara. But the story wasn't that she was missing. They claimed she'd been kidnapped. Rael drove back faster than usual, his chest tight. When he stepped into the shop, Alara sensed instantly that something had changed. His expression was grim, conflicted. He told her what he'd heard, watching as her face went pale. Her family wasn't just looking for her. They were rewriting the narrative to fit their power, making it seem like she'd been taken rather than acknowledging she had chosen freedom. She understood then that she wasn't just running from a marriage. She was running from an empire determined to maintain its image. Fear settled between them like dust. Rael didn't know what helping her meant anymore. Danger, consequences, maybe even jail. He had nothing to fall back on, no money to hire lawyers, no connections to protect him. But when he looked at her trembling, clutching the edges of her borrowed blanket, he realized the real danger was letting fear dictate his actions. He had always believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when it cost something. The day grew hotter, and tension thickened the air. Alara stayed hidden while Rael closed the shop early, pretending it was just another slow afternoon. Outside, the sun cast long shadows, and the wind carried dust across the open fields. Every passing vehicle made Alara flinch. Every unfamiliar voice outside made Rael's jaw clench. Yet something gentle grew between them that neither expected. A quiet understanding, a shared courage. As hours passed, Alara found herself telling Rael more about her life, the wealth that had caged her, the marriage arranged to secure business alliances, the loneliness of growing up surrounded by people who saw her as currency. She spoke in slow, shaking breaths, afraid he might judge her for running. But Rael didn't see weakness. He saw a woman finally claiming her own life, risking everything for a freedom most people took for granted. He opened up too, about losing his parents, about growing up in a shelter for a while, about building his tiny shop piece by piece. He never had much, but he had earned every scrap with stubborn determination. Listening to her, he realized that wealth didn't guarantee happiness. Watching him, she realized that humility didn't mean insignificance. Late afternoon turned to golden daylight, warm and serene despite the danger lurking around them. Alara stepped out of hiding for a moment, standing near the shop entrance, letting the sunlight rest on her face. For the first time in years, she felt like herself, not a Windsor, not an asset, not a future bride, but simply Alara. But peace doesn't stay long when hunted. As Rael was locking up the toolbox, an SUV rolled slowly past the shop, its engine low, its windows reflecting the sun like dark mirrors. Alara froze, instinctively stepping back. Rael moved closer to her, positioning himself slightly in front as if his body could shield her from a world much bigger than either of them. When the SUV continued down the road, leaving only dust behind, Alara felt her heart loosen in her chest and something deeper filled the space. Gratitude, trust, maybe even the first quiet spark of hope. Rael knew the shop wasn't safe anymore. He decided they needed to move her somewhere no one would think to check. An old farmhouse his parents once owned, long abandoned, sitting at the edge of a barley field. It wasn't much, but it was hidden by nature itself. When they arrived, the sun was soft and warm, bathing the broken wooden porch in gold. Birds chirped lazily in the branches overhead. It looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos chasing her. Inside, the air smelled of wood and old summers, and Alara felt an ache in her chest, an ache for the life she never allowed herself to imagine, a life where she wasn't defined by wealth or expectation, where she could stand barefoot in tall grass, breathing freely. Rael set up a small lantern, cleared dust from a corner, and made sure she had food and water. He said he'd check on her every few hours and bring back updates. She watched him walk toward the doorway, sunlight outlining him like a quiet guardian. She had met him only hours ago, yet his kindness felt more real than anything she'd known before. When he returned after sunset, he carried not just food, but news. Her family had expanded the search. Reporters swarmed the nearby towns. Rewards were increasing. Rael wasn't sure how much longer they could hide her. Alara's chest tightened with guilt. She didn't want to ruin his life, drag him into a battle he never asked for. But Rael looked at her with steady eyes, not afraid, not uncertain, but determined. Helping her wasn't a mistake to him. It was a choice. As the golden dusk settled into a warm evening, something shifted between them, an unspoken bond, delicate but strong. Alara felt tears gather as she realized that the poorest man she had ever met was giving her the richest act anyone ever had: protection without agenda, kindness without condition, courage without reward. If this story touches your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who need hope. Special request: please comment "Kindness changes lives" if you believe in the power of compassion. And though their lives would soon pull them into choices bigger than themselves, one truth remained unbreakable. Sometimes the people with the least to offer in wealth give the most in humanity. And sometimes running from one life leads you directly into the one your heart was always meant to find.